140 years of the St. Paul Winter Carnival.
I am beyond thrilled to welcome Lisa Jacobson and all of the other members of her team who I don't know to join me up here to accept, oh yeah, just keep coming this way. To be present as I read this resolution. I think there's so much darkness going on in our community right now, and it is important to take a moment to celebrate all of the things that are wonderful about our community and that in this case have been wonderful for 140 years. So I'm going to read a little bit of this resolution, not all of it, but this is your copy to take and read at home. But truly, from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you, Lisa, for your leadership. I want to thank your entire team. This event was started as a way of saying that St. Paul is a special place, and at no time could that be more important than this year. So thank you for everything you're doing. Whereas for 140 years, the St. Paul Winter Carnival has served as a beloved community tradition and gathering place in the heart of St. Paul, celebrating winter through iconic events, parades, ice sculptures, cultural programming, and family-friendly activities that have inspired and united millions of residents and visitors from around the world. Whereas the St. Paul Winter Carnival is the nation's oldest and most renowned winter festival, showcasing the creativity, resilience, and spirit of Minnesota while honoring St. Paul's rich history, cultural heritage, and commitment to community celebration. And whereas the St. Paul Winter Carnival has demonstrated a long-standing commitment to accessibility and inclusivity by offering free and low-cost events, welcoming people of all ages and backgrounds, removing barriers to attending, and reflecting the diversity of the communities it serves through its programming, partnerships, and volunteer engagement. Now, therefore, be it resolved that we recognize and honor the St. Paul Winter Carnival for its 140 years of service as a cultural, civic, and economic cornerstone of St. Paul, enriching the city's identity and bringing people together in celebration of winter, even when it's hard to do. And be it further resolved that this resolution stands as a token of deep appreciation for the St. Paul Winter Carnival and a celebration of its 140-year legacy as an anchor institution in St. Paul and for the lasting cultural, social, and economic impact it continues to have on our community. Thank you so much. This is yours. Do you want to say this? This is yours to keep to travel.
I just want to take a moment as a former council member in the city of Brooklyn Park and the former mayor. I appreciate all of you for the work that you do. I have been on the other side of the fence and I have a unique understanding of it, so thank you. I do want to also thank you for Rebecca for your work on the council around parking meters. You and I have spoken about this. It doesn't go unnoticed on your work as far as that goes. So I want to introduce our current board chair, Christine Army, and our vice chair, Dennis Egan.
I would just like to say thank you to the city for the engagement. This started 1886 on February 1st, so we're looking forward to another 140 years in partnership with the city. And thank you for being in the parade, dress warm, and we're going to have some fun. Appreciate it.
And with that, I think we should take a motion. I also didn't realize that the Winter Carnival started on my birthday, so now I feel even, not in 1886, but February 1st. So I'll make the motion. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
6 in favor, none opposed. The resolution is adopted.
Congratulations.
Item number 8 is Resolution 25-1914, outlining the city's 2026 legislative agenda. This was laid over from December 17th, 2025.
And this is going to be one of those meetings where we really go back and forth between all kinds of different topics. So this is our city's legislative agenda, which for those of you who aren't familiar with that, it's what the city will be lobbying the legislature for when we're at the Capitol this year. So there's some things that we can do as a city. There's many things that we need our legislative partners to do. And this is the first time that the council is being able to see the new administration's legislative agenda from our brand new assistant mayor as of this meeting, Nick Stumalanger. So welcome, and we look forward to hearing the presentation.
Thank you, Council President. So for the record, my name is Nick Stumalanger, Assistant Mayor for Housing, Economic Vibrancy, and Infrastructure with Mayor Herr.
And my name is Assistant Mayor Nu Vang, Staff and Strategic Partnerships with the Office of Mayor Kaliher.
And we are notably not the IGR Director or IGR Associate. I'll get to that in the slides here, but wanted to provide a good update, and we appreciate you all working with us. So overview and timeline, you've gotten this presentation or a version of this from the previous administration on kind of the framing components, and then we'll go through some of the priorities here. So I will be relying a lot on the knowledge that I have. My most recent role prior to being here with the City of St. Paul was with the House DFL caucus, and so when I talk about the dynamics at the legislature, speak from a place of experience there, so I just wanted to note that. And legislative session will begin at noon on February 17th, so just about in a month here, and then we'll end on May 17th, 2026. The legislative welcome back reception will be that following week. And for folks who've not had experience at the Capitol, this year is a policy year. Last year, budgets were passed for many of the major departments. The relevant component here is that nothing must happen, which is sometimes challenging at the legislature. So I get the not fun job of tempering expectations. I just want to address a few of the different areas of uncertainty, which is a kind way of saying it. Federal immigration enforcement and the impact it has on our residents and our businesses. The continued attention on fraud at the expense of other things, the fallout of the political assassination of Speaker Emerita and the political violence on Senator Hoffman and his family. The reconciliation bill fallout, which will have huge impacts on Medicaid services and a lot of other elements of state services and county services. A structural budget imbalance in the planning years, which I think that Eric Peterson had previously kind of detailed for you all. And then a very close 34-33 DFL majority in the Senate and a tie in the House. And then obviously midterm elections. So as I mentioned, so just last week, hard to believe it was just last week, we announced that the mayor's office had hired Jen O'Rourke from Ramsey County to be our intergovernmental relations director, and she starts in early February. So she's given notice at the county, and so that's why I'm up here kind of going through our agenda. And hiring for our IGR associate is currently underway. So moving to the kind of top city priorities, we want to make sure and incorporate a lot of the feedback from council members, city departments, partners such as the Port Authority, the Chamber, Downtown Alliance, Ramsey County, a number of organizations across the city and across the region. You've all gotten outreach from our staff to make sure that we incorporate your feedback, and that continues past today's presentation too. And wanted to share that some of the two goals that we have in building this agenda is both to maximize the economic impact that comes into the city, especially in this short, challenging legislative session, and strategically positioning the city's asks across a variety of areas. Folks I know on the council and other places have had experience at the legislature, and it often takes a couple bites at the apple to get a lot of these big projects done, and so we're excited to be at the beginning of that process. So we will go through, I know, previous conversations at the council and offline as well have kind of centered on how lengthy the legislative agenda is and how the variety of different things that we can prioritize and what that looks like. We have attempted to consolidate as much as possible to have a one-pager or 1.5-pager, which is in your packets, and it's titled Preliminary 2026 St. Paul Legislative Priorities. I couldn't quite get it down to one page. I got kind of close, so forgive me there. The top component is the arena complex and surrounding entertainment district investments, and we have a policy statement in there talking about the different options that state assistance may take: cash bonding, capital bonding, annual appropriations, forgivable or interest-free loans, local option sales tax, and then exemptions on sales tax related to construction. And I'll just note for this group here that the negotiations with the team are ongoing as we've gotten up to speed. And this project would include funding for Grand Casino, River Center, Roy Wilkins, eastbound Kellogg Bridge, and the River Center parking ramp, and would strive to include social district authorization as well. A couple of the other components we're looking at that we've done some work on, the impacts of the cyber incident are obviously still reverberating, and we wanted to add to the legislative agenda amending the definition of a natural disaster in state statute so that the costs incurred from the cyber attack could be 100% reimbursed from the state. A few states across the country are doing this as cyber attacks are becoming pretty likely to continue, and this would have that 100% reimbursement. And I'll just note here that a Mower County in southern Minnesota experienced a pretty crippling cyber attack last year in 2025, and so we're hopeful that there's some bipartisan attention to that. Another component is establishing and funding a reimbursement program for the law enforcement agencies that respond to protests and demonstrations at the Capitol complex and the governor's residence. We don't know exactly the mechanism that could take, but there is some interest in that reimbursement because folks don't necessarily know the State Patrol is in charge of the lawns, Capitol lawn, the governor's residence lawn, sidewalks and beyond is usually SPPD. And then if folks need assistance, fire and EMS services as well. And so getting some of that reimbursement with kind of a larger increase in First Amendment activity and protest and really positive things, I think, for our residents. We just want to make sure that there's some reimbursement and acknowledgement that we love having the Capitol complex and the governor's residence here, but we'd love to get that reimbursement. Next is state and regional investments into the West 7th corridor. So folks have probably noticed that MnDOT is leading a first-of-its-kind partnership between the city, the county, and Met Council on kind of a full combination of redesign and reconstruction from Kellogg to all the way through down Highway 5 to MSP. And this would be likely a multi-year ask and could take the form of a couple different ways in which we would ask for funding there. Another component that we expect to be a topic of conversation at the legislature is making sure we establish reimbursements and supports for individuals, family, community organizations, businesses, and local governments for the costs that we're all seeing that they've incurred during this immigration surge. Meeting with a lot of businesses over the last, I guess, how many days has it been? 15 days that we've been here at the mayor's office. The impacts that they're having, businesses closing down, not having support for their staff or for other folks. We want to make sure we prioritize that at the legislature, and this is written in a way that we can kind of be nimble as far as we're looking for that reimbursement. And then incentivizing downtown redevelopment through some of the creative financing tools with TIF, historic tax credit expansions for conversions, and then the CUB credits as well. So those are the kind of top line priorities that we're looking at, that we want to have feedback on and working with us as we get up to speed. There are some other additional legislative items, capital investment projects. Like we said, this is a policy year and or a bonding year. And so we're hopeful there's a robust bonding bill at the legislature this year. So the Mississippi River Learning Center, Phase 2, the Como Big Cat exhibit, Randolph Avenue Bridge reconstruction, and the historic Walnut Steps on Summit are all holdovers that I believe had been presented to you all previously that we want to make sure we keep. Parks and Recreation, there's reinstating funding for regional parks, which has not been a fully funded component since it's been in state statute. An estimate that we had gathered was that St. Paul is annually seeing about $5 million in lost revenue from that partnership that hasn't been funded, and then a number of supports for recreation centers and libraries. I'll let you read those. And then continuing on in the public safety area, repealing some of the local government preemption on common sense gun violence prevention measures, making sure that the city has authority to prohibit handguns and weapons in a number of different city-controlled and leased spaces, designating libraries and rec centers as drug-free zones, and making sure we add St. Paul to the speed control camera pilot that I believe it's Mounds View or Mendota Heights and Minneapolis participate in. And then some of the other components, reinstating some of the local cannabis aid, next steps on the copper wire theft and scrap protections and changes there, and then a few items from HERO on protection of labor standards complainants from retaliation and subpoena power. And then another component, we're in a really good spot with all the lead service line replacements. We do need that additional funding from the state to make sure we kind of come through that full 10-year vision from St. Paul Water. And then I will just note, this is obviously a long laundry list. I had to use a smaller size font, so I apologize for that. Previously, the platform is about 35 pages. The document you have in front of you is about 5.5 pages. That's not because there are not things that we don't think are very important to advocate for or allow the IGR director and associate to be able to talk through with other folks. It's that we want to make sure that we're being strategic as we communicate with folks. We can build one-pagers. We can do a lot of really wonderful things in talking through this work at the Capitol, and I think we will because Jen is has a fantastic relationship with folks all across the legislature already, but we just want to make sure we are naming the things that are our city priorities and values while also making sure the asks are strategic. So next steps on what this looks like. So We would love to incorporate council member, subject matter experts from across the departments in testimony, in helping us write letters to support as items come up in the legislature. So I'm sure there are some of these items that you are more or less enthusiastic about as they are across your wards, and we want your feedback. We want to be able to strategically use Team St. Paul to the best, most effective ability at the Capitol. It's not too far of a walk if it's nice outside. And then we are happy to adjust these items, add items over the next couple weeks. And I believe, and I'll kind of look to the council president for this, the final council vote and amendments of the legislative agenda is well set up to happen before the session starts on the 4th or the 11th of February. So appreciate you bearing with me, as obviously this is other duties as assigned, which is, I think, I've been describing this presentation and a lot of things that have been happening in the last 15 days, but really happy to be here, and thank you for the time and the presentation here.
Well, Assistant Mayors, thank you so much. I was going to say I look forward to you not being our IGR directors, not because you didn't do a fantastic job, but because I know how much else you have on your plates, and in the last 15 days, the fact that you've taken time to put this together is really impressive. So thank you. And I also really appreciate the move towards fewer pages, and specifically calling out, we're not at one yet, but there's always room for improvement, what really are the priorities, rather than if everything's a priority, nothing's a priority. And we've been saying that around this table for some of us for a very, very long time. So thank you. I will look to my colleagues for questions and comments. I will note my plan will be to lay this over till February 11th, giving us time to work with the administration between now and then, and anything we want to add. We do have a very, very full chamber today, and so I do want to be mindful of that, and our discussion can also continue with the administration in between this meeting and then. But if anyone has comments they want to make sure they say right now, we should do it. So, Vice President.
Yep, just very quickly, just really appreciate the ask for us to be included. Like you've got 7 more spokespeople here that are willing to kind of go, not fight with the legislature, but go lobby for the resources that we need, and certainly in partnership with the mayor's office. So really looking forward to working with all of you on our legislative priorities.
Yeah, Council Vice President, Council President, I've been describing it as creative collaboration. That's, I think, the name of the game here.
I like both of those words. Any other comments? All right, seeing none, thank you both again very much, and we will make a motion to lay this matter over till February 11th. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
6 in favor, none opposed. The item is laid over to February 11th. Item number 9 is Resolution 26-121, calling on Governor Walz to pass an eviction moratorium through executive order to support St. Paul in keeping families in their homes and further protect them from ICE.
And before we move to discuss this, I want to move a version 2, which is in Legistar, with the Council Vice President's support. This comes out of a conversation that I had with some small business owners and also with Assistant Mayor Stu Malanger this morning about the issue that tenants who are small businesses are also facing, who are at risk of eviction. And often we focus on tenants who are residents only, but a lot of our small businesses who don't own their buildings are also at risk. So the version 2 basically adds in businesses as those tenants who are in need of protection. So I will move that version 2 again with the author's blessing before we discuss it further. Do we need to take a vote on that?
If you can do it together, or you can do it now.
Should we just take the vote all at once at the end?
Yeah, I can make a motion.
Okay. Vice President.
Yep, thank you. I'm very proud to sponsor this resolution in support of all my colleagues. You know, we're facing a crisis that deserves immediate action. For close to a year now, federal agents have flooded the Twin Cities. Vulnerable and targeted communities and residents are not able to safely go to work, send their kids to school, or childcare, or even run errands. This is having a widespread effect on businesses, childcare centers, schools, and more. No family should be forced to choose between risking arrest and detention and working to keep their home and their family housed. So we are calling on the governor to issue an eviction moratorium, and it is a common sense, unprecedented action that the state has taken before. In the COVID-19 pandemic, the governor issued an eviction moratorium. These are not extenuating circumstances. If these are not extenuating circumstances, I'm not sure what is. So for months, neighbors and residents have cobbled together networks of care and support in response to the military occupation that's just been unleashing violence in our communities. We've created networks of care, launched neighborhood patrols, become legal observers, and help deliver groceries. Everyday residents have taken on the important role of public safety. The risk is too high for our neighbors to leave their homes for work, school, or to practice faith. So in order to keep our residents safe, they need the ability to shelter in place. Immigrant-owned businesses need to stay open and continue to pay their workers. The impacts of an economic and housing crisis in this moment will extend beyond the current immigration operation. The precedent exists, the legal authority exists, and what we are in desperate need of now is the will to meet the moment and do everything within our powers to protect our immigrant communities. So with that, I'll move a version 2, and with that, I'll move version 2.
Thanks so much, Vice President, for your leadership on this. There's a motion on the table. Is there discussion of the motion? Ms. Yang.
Thank you, Council President. Council Vice President, I would like to say thank you to you for your bold action and taking swift action to bring this in front of the council. I'm very supportive of this. I'm proud to be a sponsor, and I want to give a shout out to organizations like Local Progress, also Minneapolis Councilmember Robin Wensley, who I first heard about this resolution from, who have been organizing elected officials to really come together, to unite, and really call for this eviction moratorium. I will be really honest, it hurts to be here again. We were here during the pandemic and called for, the governor issued an eviction moratorium during that time to protect families who were on the verge of eviction during the pandemic. And as a person of color, as a woman of color, a council member representing a part of our city that is deeply impoverished, and with the zip code 55106 being the neighborhood that has experienced the highest rates of eviction in our entire city, it really hurts to be here. But I know that I'm preaching to the choir when I say that I am amongst people who care deeply about our working class community, about our Black and brown community members, immigrants, refugees, our folks who are undocumented during this time, to really protect them and to do everything that we can to champion them and make sure that they continue staying here home with us in our communities. And so I want to say thank you to everybody who is in deep solidarity with this movement to call for the governor to issue an eviction moratorium.
Thanks, Ms. Yang. Ms. Coleman.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you, Council Vice President, for introducing this resolution. I am in strong support of it as well. One challenging thing about the last few weeks is all of the consequences of the federal occupation and immigration enforcement that go beyond the families that are being torn apart, that goes beyond the people who are being detained, sent to El Paso, sent to Texas, out of the state before their families can get to them to fight for their legal rights. The number of consequences that go beyond that is unquantifiable. We are hearing these stories every day from people in our communities, people who can't get to work, people who can't get to doctor's appointments, people who have whose lives are truly being torn apart even without a detention by ICE, but simply because they exist in a city that is experiencing this federal occupation. It is horrifying. And I think that we have all shared the frustration of knowing that what we do at the municipal level is not going to be enough. Having the conversation with the housing attorneys, trying to figure out, is there any way that we can do an eviction moratorium in the city of St. Paul, and getting the repeated answer that no, we can't do that in St. Paul, and that this is truly going to take every single level of government, city, county, state, acting, the federal government acting, members of Congress acting to stop the harm that is currently being wrought on our community. So I implore the governor to act. I hope that the action that we are taking, that the Minneapolis City Council has taken, that I know local elected officials across the state are calling for, is because we are seeing this need desperately across our city. I hope the governor will heed that call and act swiftly to enact this eviction moratorium.
Thanks, Ms. Coleman. Ms. Jost.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you, Council Vice President, for bringing this forward. I'll just echo what my colleagues have been saying. Our city is in a crisis right now. We're talking about our residents not able to figure out how to meet their basic needs, how to get to work, how to make sure that they can provide roofs over their heads, how can kids get to school. We're probably going to find out in a few days here that a lot of kids in St. Paul are going to choose to stay home from school and get their learning that way. And as Councilmember Coleman said, it relies every level of government. There's only so many things that we can do here at the city level, and we're really relying on our elected officials at the state level, the county, and especially Congress to be able to act. And so I think this is absolutely the right thing to do. And I also implore the governor to act on this item to protect our residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Jost. Ms. Bowie.
Thank you, Council President. I'm just really proud to stand before here and just support a swift action and the call to the governor to do, a tool, one of the strategies that he has in his toolbox Earlier today, I had the opportunity really to stand in solidarity with our St. Paul delegation at the Capitol inside of the press room where we stood and supported Nasra Ahmed, who was a Somali young girl, 23 years old, who was kidnapped from ICE and detained. And our representative, Samakab, spent days and over around the clock trying to find her and get her home. And I just think about just how many other families who are in the process of trying to find their loved ones, whether they're been detained and brought to Texas. And I can't only imagine we're in the midst of all of this crisis that they have to think about how they're going to pay rent. Mm-hmm. We're also in the process of how are people going to file their taxes? How are people going to make sure their financial and safety and economic security blanket is intact? So I think this is a short-term fix that at least the governor can propose and enact. And I think these emergency times call for us to utilize all of our emergency powers. So I'm happy to support this.
Thanks, Ms. Bowie. Thank you all. I echo everything that everyone has said, and I want to again commend this council for the seriousness and the urgency with which we're taking action. This is one of a number of items that we're going to be introducing just today, and then I know that there are others coming in the few weeks because we are hearing loud and clear from our constituents the need, the pain, and the requirement that we act. So thank you again, Vice President, for bringing this forward. We have a motion for version 2. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
6 in favor, none opposed. The resolution is adopted as amended.
Take a motion from Council Vice President to suspend the rules to introduce a resolution about the Day of Truth and Freedom. All in favor of suspending the rules say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
6 in favor, none opposed. The rules are suspended. Resolution 26-166 is recognizing Friday, January 23rd, 2026 as Day of Truth and Freedom.
Council Vice President.
Thank you. I really appreciate the very late consideration, but sort of true to process, it is in Legistar. There are copies before my colleagues. We distributed it before the council meeting, so hopefully everyone has a chance to look at it. I will be very quickly reading through it just for the sake of transparency, and I also want to be clear this resolution does not and is not encouraging or influencing any city staff. I myself will be participating and encourage folks to decide for themselves. So St. Paul is grounded in values of dignity, fairness, community, and the respect of the law. Recent federal immigration enforcement actions have had profound effects on our families and communities across the state, creating fear, disruption, and uncertainty for many Minnesotans. And these circumstances have made it difficult for many residents to carry on daily life as usual, particularly for workers, students, families, and small businesses. Minnesotans have a long-standing tradition of engaging in peaceful, nonviolent civic participation and moral reflection during moments of significant social concern. A broad coalition of labor organizations, faith communities, community-based organizations, student, workers, and small businesses have called for a statewide Day of Truth and Freedom as a voluntary opportunity for reflection, solidarity, and peaceful expression. Participants in this day are exercising their constitutional rights through nonviolent action, often at personal or economic sacrifice, in order to express concern for the well-being of their communities. Minnesota's faith leaders and community leaders have affirmed their shared commitment to peace, safety, and the restoration of trust within our neighborhoods. And now, therefore, be resolved, the City of St. Paul proclaims Friday, January 23rd, 2026 as Day of Truth and Freedom in St. Paul. I'll make a motion to approve and appreciate the support from my colleagues.
Thanks, Vice President. There's a motion on the table to approve. Is there any discussion of the motion? Ms. Yang.
Thank you, Council President. And again, Council Vice President, thank you for bringing forward the resolution here. I fully endorse this resolution and also the community action taking place on Friday and plan, and I will be there. I just want to name, I love the buzz in the community from young people, people of all ages and backgrounds, entrepreneurs, people who are running clinics in my ward who are calling me and saying, Nelsie, I'm going to be closing down on Friday. I'm going to be joining you. And these are people who I know this is going to be their first protest, being out in community in solidarity with the community on an issue that has been so personal and important to them. And so I just really commend the entire community, everybody who's been out there, whether you've been out there being constitutional observers, being out there protecting your neighbors in every way that you know how. There's such deep bravery and courage in doing that, and I can't wait to see the turnout that we will have on Friday. Again, it's definitely a moment for all of us to be speaking up.
Thanks, Ms. Yang. Any other discussion? Ms. Bowie and then Ms. Coleman.
Thank you, Council President. I just wanted to reiterate, I applaud everyone who is just volunteering and sacrificing their time, their efforts, their energy, and just like putting it all out there to show up for the Day of Truth and Freedom. It's just really sad that we're here again. I am just really thinking about the time we were in during the pandemic and also with the aftermath of George Floyd and so many more, where we've had so many truth and reconciliations. We had so many days of recognizing the pain and, especially just hearing the scary news of the surge, of the federal surge, and having additional 1,500, we're now looking into the thousands of ICE agents here in Minnesota. I just think this is the opportunity for us to be, times 100 in terms of how many people are going to come out and show up for humanity, how many people are going to come out not only for the truth and freedom, but making sure that we're supporting our neighbors and showing that here in Minnesota, the North Star state, this is a refugee state, like we are the melting pot, and really just like reflecting, but also showing that solidarity through action. So again, thank you for everyone. I've been really excited just to see businesses that, I haven't really seen in this advocacy light, really stepping out on faith and joining the movement.
Thanks, Ms. Bowie. Ms. Coleman.
I guess I will just echo what everybody else has said and take this opportunity to provide a PSA that for those who are planning to be at the action on Friday, it's going to be a wind chill of -45. So please get your hats and your mittens in advance. And if you are planning to participate in the economic boycott on Friday, buy your warm beverages in advance. That is all.
Thanks, Ms. Coleman. Ms. Jost.
Thanks, Council President. I'll just say that I'm really looking forward to this day. I think what gives me a lot of hope through very difficult times are the ways that our community is coming together. And folks of all ages, all of our businesses. I also have seen businesses in my ward that are participating in this, that again maybe haven't participated in this way in our community. And I do think that seeing how powerful we are together is what makes me feel very optimistic that we will get through this. And so I'm looking forward to Friday. And thanks to everyone in advance for your participation.
Great. Well, thank you all. Thanks again, Vice President. If there's no other discussion, there's a motion on the table. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
6 in favor, none opposed. The resolution is adopted. Item number 10 is Staff Report 26-9, Review of Emergency Management Services, Early Notification Systems.
Ms. Bowie.
Thank you so much, Council President. As Director Rick is coming up, I just wanted to just share with the council, we really wanted to act in urgency, and I had a chance to talk with the director, particularly around the terrain of what our emergency powers are. And what is under our definition. This is not a policy meeting. This is just simply a staff report. I do anticipate coming forward in the next couple weeks, having Director Rick come to our policy meeting and just have more chance for us to ask questions and get a deeper understanding around how we want to utilize our emergency powers in the city.
Great. So welcome up, Director Shute.
Thank you, Council President Naker, Sponsor Councilmember Bowie, and other council members. And this staff report, before I start, public information and warnings is a very broad topic with many systems, a lot of technical jargon, and I'm not trying to. I want to give a broad understanding here to the group, to the council members and those watching, on the broadcast. But my goal here is to explain how decisions are made in the city of St. Paul and what tools are used and why trust is central to it all. I want to start with trust because that's really the foundation of public warning. People only take protective action if they trust the information, trust the source, and believe the message fits the situation. Every decision we make about alerting in this space is really a trust decision. How alerts are made and decided on in the city of St. Paul. Alert decisions follow our city's emergency operations plan, and I want to scale up before we get into that. It emanates out of the executive authority at the federal level. And then it comes down into the state with our state statute, Chapter 12, where it establishes the Emergency Management Department and the emergency management functions, and then into our city ordinance, administrative code, Chapter 11, where it establishes the Emergency Management Department and those emergency management functions. Our emergency operations plan is, built of all hazards, we call it, and there's an emergency support function that really brings to bear the functional expertise of all of our departments to help solve problems in the city. And specifically, emergency support function 2 and emergency support function 15, 2 being communications and 15 being public information, are those that really identify the roles and responsibilities to public alerting and public warnings. So there's clear roles and rules or responsibilities established in the emergency operations plan, and different situations require different tools, different functional expertise, and discipline matters relative to alerting. If alerts are overused or used inconsistently, people stop paying attention, and that's when a real risk is generated. We'll move on to our first system. This is IPAWS, or the Integrated Public Alerts and Warning System. This is a FEMA-owned and operated system, and it's also governed by the FCC that works with the cellular providers. This includes, what's called a wireless emergency alert, a WEA, aka Amber Alert, that we're all familiar with, that shake, rattles, and rolls your cell phone when they go off. The emergency alert system, that's broadcast TV, radio, even cable television. Our civil warning sirens that you hear first Sunday or first Wednesday of every month at 1 o'clock, as well as NOAA weather radios. But specifically that WEA that we're most familiar with, that Amber Alert, this is the loudest alerting tool available. It reaches everyone's phone in a geographic area indiscriminately. It's used only for immediate life-saving threats. These alerts are sent by Ramsey County, even though they're generated by a functional expert in the field for that situation. They're sent by Ramsey County, specifically a trained and authorized ECC, or Emergency Communications Center supervisor, at the request of an incident commander, generally speaking, or a functional expert in the field. So they're used sparingly on purpose. When people hear this alert, they should know it means something serious. And I believe many of us have experienced what's called overshoot, where you're out of the area and you're like, why am I getting this alert? And that's part of the thing that we work very hard in my discipline to avoid that situation. But again, the IPAWS, nobody in the city can send one. We can generate the language to send one, but it's sent by Ramsey County out of the 911 dispatch center by a supervisor. Moving on to the next system, it's called Everbridge. Interestingly enough, this is the entry point into IPAWS for the Ramsey County, so that message is actually sent through Everbridge up to IPAWS, but we also use Everbridge. This tool is used when danger is still real, but it's localized. It allows alerts to focus on specific neighborhoods, often used in what's called a polygon, drawing a geographic circle, or groups instead of everyone. Ramsey County issues this public alert using this system. Again, ECC supervisor or 911 supervisor is the only one that can send a community alert using Everbridge. The city uses it for internal alerts in the workplace in coordination. Again, community alerts through this tool are limited to imminent threats to life. The data is a database of residents. Reverse 911 data is primarily the source, or we can establish opt-in databases for things such as snow emergencies or other opt-in alerts within the community. And it's a precision tool, not a workaround for emergency alerts. A few other systems worth mentioning here. Not all information in this space should come through our emergency alert system. Social media, civic notices, for instance, and public information channels are also used. You can see photos on the slide there. Our ENS that is managed by the city clerk for those administrative and legislative notices that go out to residents as they opt in. We have our social media channels in the city, in the departments, and then that center picture is a cooperative with TPT, Public Broadcasting, and that's called TPT Now. And these tools inform the public, but they don't order people to take immediate action. Very useful in building preparedness and also a response and recovery information. Keeping these tools separate but complementary avoids confusion. What does this mean for the council? I wanted to express today that there's clear roles and give some clarity. There's clear boundaries around who issues the alerts and when. That separation is intentional. It protects credibility, avoids desensitization, and ensures that when alerts are issued, the public takes them seriously. That concludes my staff report, and I'll gladly take your questions.
Thanks so much, Director. Really appreciate it. I look to Ms. Bowie.
Thank you so much, Council President. Thank you so much, Rick, for being here and just getting this ready in such a short timeline here. Like I said, I definitely want to expand if people are interested to see how we can use this tool. I do have a quick question, particularly if you could touch a little bit more on the customization of the alert system, the early notification systems. One of the things that I was really curious about, or you're saying how like the district councils have the powers to also issue alerts, or a council member has the power to issue alerts. Is there like a mechanism to where if I want to alert Ward 1 or, Council Member Coleman wants to alert her ward, like do we have that flexibility with this tool?
With the early note, thank you, Councilmember Bowie, and for that question. With the early notification system managed by the city clerk, we can establish opt-in alerts. They can be specific to a ward. They can be specific to a district for a district council. We do have SMS credits, what's called, in that system. We do, if you receive a Gov delivery alert, especially for snow emergencies, we've used heavy use of ENS for snow emergencies, and that is also on the cellular phone as an SMS, so an opt-in. So that would be an administrative process, either by the council or a district council to seek access to that system and build that opt-in alerting to be actuated, when a threshold is defined and met.
Thank you.
Thanks, Director. Any other questions? And it sounds like we will be getting a longer, potentially, report and time to discuss this at another time. Doesn't look like it. Thank you so much. Really appreciate the timely information. And thanks again, Ms. Bowie.
Item number 11 is ordinance 26-1, final adoption for modifying and establishing certain city council staff positions in Chapter 16 of the Administrative Code.
And for those of you who don't tune into us every single week, the way that we adopt legislation in this body is through 3 readings. A first reading is the first time we ever hear about a piece of legislation or what we call an ordinance, and we have a staff report at that time explaining what it is. There will be one of those today. Then we have a second reading where we have a public hearing. We hear people's thoughts on that ordinance. And then we have a third reading where we adopt the ordinance. So anything that you're seeing here for final adoption has already had at least 2 hearings beforehand. And then you'll see we have some items today for first reading and some for public hearing. So this is before us for final adoption. I will take a motion from Vice President Kim to approve. Any discussion of the motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
6 in favor, none opposed. The ordinance is adopted. Item number 12 is first reading of ordinance 26-4, granting the application of Bylon Company to rezone 4 I-1 light industrial parcels to B5 Central Business Service.
And since this is a first reading, we will have a staff report. Welcome up.
Good afternoon, Council President, council members. Excuse me while I get this presentation ready.
Take your time.
And while I'm getting this up, my name is Stefan Duarte Breen. I'm a city planner for the Department of Planning and Economic Development. Okay, before you is an application to rezone 4 I-1 light industrial parcels to B5 Central Business Service at 500 Broadway Street. The property is located at 500 Broadway Street. It's 4 parcels comprising the 500 block of Broadway Street. It's in the Dayton's Bluff neighborhood in Ward 2. Just north and east of downtown across from Interstate 94. Land use and zoning in the area includes a multifamily residence to the north, which is zoned B5, warehouse uses to the east and south, zoned I1 light industrial, and the interstate highway to the west. And again, the zoning application is to rezone 4 I1 light industrial parcels to B5 Central Business Service District. The findings are that the proposed B5 zoning is consistent with the comprehensive plan. The 2040 comprehensive plan designates future land use of the site as mixed use. And the main distinguishing characteristics is in the mixed use district is a balance of jobs and housing within walking distance of one another. The B5 zoning district, the proposed B5 zoning district permits a mix of uses that are compatible with the future land use designation. And the second finding is that the rezoning contributes to orderly and predictable development. The B5 Central Business Service District permits a range of uses in proximity to the Central Business District, including wholesaling and certain manufacturing that are compatible with the surrounding multifamily housing, office and warehouse, medical office, and parking uses. The proximity to dense areas of housing and employment and to the Central Business District make the B5 zoning district appropriate for the property proposed to be rezoned. The staff recommendation is approval of rezoning of the 4 parcels from I1 light industrial to B5 Central Business Service. And at zoning committee, the committee recommended approval in a 4-0 vote, and at planning commission, approval was recommended with a unanimous voice vote. The District 4 Planning Council has not submitted a letter of recommendation, and there were no letters in support and no letters of concern in opposition. And that's the end of my presentation. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Great. Thank you so much for the helpful presentation. Any questions? Doesn't look like it. Thanks so much. This will be laid over for second reading.
Yep, the item is laid over to January 28th for second reading public hearing.
Take a motion from Vice President Kim to suspend the rules to introduce a first reading of an ordinance to prohibit law enforcement staging operations on city-owned properties and limit access to non-public city spaces. All in favor of suspending the rules, please say aye. All opposed?
6 in favor, none opposed. The rules are suspended. Ordinance 26-5, adding Chapter 268 to the Legislative Code to prohibit law enforcement staging operations on city-owned properties and limit access to non-public city spaces.
And since this is a first reading as well, we will have a staff report. Welcome up.
Thank you, council members and council president, for the opportunity to speak today. These are times that try our souls as a city. It's important that we highlight the efforts that the council is taking today on the individual ordinance, but also discuss the steps that we intend to take as a council moving forward. So part of my presentation will also discuss our ongoing legislative strategy to respond to the ongoing federal actions and that our city is currently suffering from. As the legislative body of the city council is empowered to create and make changes to our city's laws. This includes our city charter, which dictates the structure of our city's government, our administrative code, which dictates what actions our city staff can take, and our legislative code, which applies to the public living and working in our city limits. The council has committed it to meeting the needs of our city's people, including updates to the city's existing separation ordinance. However, the council's approach recognizes the approach unveiled today, beginning with this ordinance, recognizes the urgency to act expediently and with the necessity to build durable protections that provide clarity to residents and that can withstand legal challenges. The council acknowledges that since the events of December 25th, 2025, everyone knows things have changed. The dynamics of the federal escalation show that the actions of federal immigration agencies have changed and continue to change, which means that the residents of the city cannot wait for one comprehensive change to the city's existing separation ordinance, which is located in the administrative code and only binds the conduct of its employees. With that, work is also underway to create additional changes to other parts of our city's legislative code, moving forward with a multi-part approach to allow for swifter action and greater legal durability for ordinance changes. The goal is to respond rapidly to the needs of our communities, ensuring that the changes will serve as a resilient defense against crisis situations yet to come. The changes before you today are the first in a series of those proposed changes, and I'll be walking through the Ordinance 26-5. A brief high-level summary of the ordinance is that it adds Chapter 68 to the Legislative Code as a legislative ordinance. It prohibits law enforcement staging on city-owned properties and limits access to non-public city spaces. I should get that order correct. Clarifies that city employees may not permit any access to city-owned or city-controlled property except when required by a signed warrant. There are two key terms. Defining federal immigration laws is an expansive definition. It is beyond, it is meant to include and capture the reality that the federal government is using an expanded definition of immigration process on a criminal basis to justify the way that they conduct the seizures of people and conduct their operations. So this definition is to be expansive of the reality rather than rely on existing definitions, and defines staging area as an area used to assemble, mobilize, coordinate, and/or deploy vehicles, equipment, or materials and related personnel for carrying operations for the enforcement of federal immigration laws. And so where access is prohibited is city-owned or city-controlled parking lots, ramps, vacant lots, and garages that are not owned to the general or that are not open to the general public. No federal, state, or local government entity or personnel may use city-owned or city-controlled parking lots or any other similar use for enforcing federal immigration laws. And city officials may not consent or authorize any access to city-owned or city-controlled property except when required by judicial warrant. Non-public city spaces include areas like bathrooms, restricted areas requiring badge access, workstations, break rooms, storage closets, and employee-only areas. Access to these non-public city spaces are not open for purposes of enforcing federal immigration laws. City employees do not have the legal authority to consent or permit access to these spaces in situations where a warrant would otherwise be required. So I'm happy to detail specific questions about the ordinance, but I have a lot more I'd like to discuss. So I'm happy to save for questions to the end as well. So with that, I'm just going to go back a slide briefly. In the 5 weeks that have occurred since the City Council adopted Resolution 25-1980, a team of council offices have worked with myself to collect feedback from all council offices and the public, including 3 public hearings in council chambers and 1 community event, as to perspectives on the separation ordinance and the current operations of ICE in our city. In doing this collection, we've heard a number of perspectives and received a long list of priorities that require us to engage thoughtfully about the road ahead. So after moving forward and having those conversations, we have agreed to a phased and sequential rollout of comprehensive legislative reforms and policy changes. This is designed to address the rapidly evolving situation. This approach is also responsive to feedback provided from a variety of stakeholders that will be responsible for implementing these protections. And we are also committed to working with our partners in the mayor's office at using every tool possible, including policy, legislation, process, and procedure, to protect the residents of St. Paul. In the short term, on January 28, 2026, the council intends to introduce 2 legislative ordinances that would build on existing state law to limit the use of masks and other identity-concealing mechanisms by law enforcement officers operating in our city and require clear, visible display of insignia of those said officers. We also must, in the short term and in the medium term, engage on a question of what the separation ordinance is to be. We have to recognize that there are 2 tensions at play with our separation ordinance, which has been in effect for 20 years, which is withheld legal challenge, and has been challenged in court. We are the defendants in litigation for our separation ordinance against the federal government. With those contextual factors in play, we have to reconcile whether the separation ordinance, which currently already clearly provides that city resources are not to be used for the purposes of enforcing federal immigration laws, whether that we need to further clarify that the city's policy is not to assist ICE or employ crowd control tactics during those immigration operations, or clarify that in that ordinance, whether anything is intended to prevent public safety officials from responding to calls for aid from St. Paul residents who are in the presence of ICE. These are tensions that we need to work together as a council and as a community to resolve, because we know that moving forward, any insufficient or non-durable solution contained within an administrative code is only a simple one-shot solution to a broader problem that is going to continue to evolve. And so while we are closely, while our conversations and our additional policy actions in the weeks ahead are to occur, we are committed to monitoring those activities, responding to what citizens are seeing on the ground, and having a new public conversation using the Public Safety Committee, the Policy Committee, and all other resources to engage in a conversation about public safety resources, training, and policies that will require standalone actions beyond the context of immigration enforcement. The other piece that I think I want to emphasize most plainly to the people listening at home who are concerned, scared, and terrified, that the full array of policy responses is needed from the council at a time of this crisis. The federal government's tipped their hand at how they intend to conduct operations into the future, and we need to be clear-eyed and have resiliency as a council in our policymaking process, and that means committing ourselves to moving through the process that we have agreed to in terms of moving items under suspension, working with the city attorney's office on ensuring that they've received proper legal review, and at the same time that when we are responsive to community concerns, that we work with all partners in engaging those conversations, and at the same time using this council space to provide those updates. Finally, I'll identify one final piece of information. As part of the One Big Beautiful Bill that was enacted in this summer, the ICE budget is expected to exceed $28 billion in the next 4 years. There is a clear-eyed resiliency that is needed from this city to identify our public spaces that are most at risk, our communities that are most vulnerable, and our democratic resources and values that are most at risk. And that requires coordination across different governing partners like our county and our state resources. That also requires thoughtful, deliberative action as a body here, and that also requires hearing from the mayor's office of ways that they see ways we can advance protections for the city, and also at the same time, much like the eviction moratorium was speaking to, repair the economic damage that has been done to the city caused by the federal immigration enforcement action. In so doing, this phased sequential approach, durability is our best defense. Our resilience is based in our capacity to move as a legislative body. And I appreciate the thoughtfulness that's gone into getting to this point, and the work and the energy that's got to this point. But the work has to continue in so many more ways and in so many more realities that we haven't yet confronted as a city. So I appreciate the time and the ability to kind of conclude on that somewhat darker message, but I think we're all clear-eyed and resolute in what's ahead. I stand for questions.
Thank you so much for the staff report. Are there any questions? All right, thank you so much. I also want to thank my colleagues, Council Vice President Kim, Councilmember Yang, Councilmember Coleman, who've been the lead authors on this. And I really appreciate the fact that we're moving forward with urgency and the phased approach that lets us bring forward different pieces each week. And I heard Mr. Greenfield say we've got one in front of us now. We'll see others in front of us coming forward. I also appreciate the fact that you've clearly delineated between actions that direct others, like federal agents, and actions that direct our own staff. We need both of those, but we've been hearing loud and clear that we in particular want to see those actions directed at the federal agents as well. So I'm glad that we are starting with this piece. I'm going to look to the authors first for comments. Vice President Kim.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, besides extending deep gratitude to my colleagues who have spent an enormous amount of our time pulling together last-minute meetings and keeping the trains running on time, but also to the city staff that have worked tirelessly over the weekends. Notwithstanding our own attorney here at the table, Dan, thank you so much for the time that you've put into this. I know that staff have been incredibly exhausted trying to move at the speed of community. I'm really proud to bring this forward for a multitude of reasons, but the first one is that there's a I think everyone took a step in, right? We needed to meet the urgency of this moment, and passing something all together, allowing the pieces that still need time to hang up the things that are ready, wasn't meeting the moment. So we all took one big step in to say, what are things that we can move on now? And that was, I think, through a process of ideation, creative problem solving, both with the mayor's office and the city attorney's office. And so that phased and sequential is important, and it's, again, it's the things that are ready now, we're gonna move on, we're not gonna wait. The things that will take time, you'll see us roll out a multitude of different things coming through the council moving forward. The durability language is really important, right? Part of the all-in-one versus separating them out helps us make sure that, you know, if one thing, you know, I hate to say it, but sort of like our tenant protections the first time we took a try at it, right? Issuing a stay can impact the entire ordinance versus how do we separate things to make sure we're protecting the parts that are good. In that conversation, we talked about policy, process and procedure, and ordinance, and working through what are those pieces that we can implement as a city. And I think, like, a lot of residents love to see us bring forward legislation here at the table, and oftentimes just a really strong, good reminder, it's not the only tool that we have. And so there'll be things that the council will work on that you'll see a policy committee that's about policy, or working with city departments where you might see a press release that we're improving our processes and procedures. So just know, even if you don't see it come to the table, it doesn't mean that the council isn't looking at a much more comprehensive approach across all the city departments. And also it allows us to work with each individual department to dig really deep, to look at the ways that they're working, how things are working, how things are not working within their processes, policies, and procedures. And so I'm just very proud to bring this forward and see my colleagues sort of have a united front around both process, policy, and also those things meeting the urgency of this moment. So I will look to my other co-sponsors to see if they have any additional things they'd like to add.
Great. I see Ms. Yang and then Ms. Coleman.
Thank you, Council President. I echo what you said, Council Vice President, about just giving a shout out to all of the people, the organizations, the staff who came together and really made sure, you know, that we had language ready to go for today. I want to say thank you to you, Tim, our incredible Chief Policy Officer, for your presentation earlier. It was stellar. And I just want you to know that I was very proud about the message and how you delivered and conveyed the values of the council here and the deep injustices that our communities have experienced day after day, left to right. And it feels like it isn't stopping. But I know that we are a community that is resilient, and we will persevere and prevail, and we will win, and we will get ICE out. I do have comments I want to make, but you know, I am just thinking about Tim, what you said in the beginning about how we are living in trying times, and we definitely are. I mean, just before we came into the council meeting here, I had a conversation with my staff who shared that they detained 2 teenagers in Minneapolis. Also yesterday, right after I was done with the meeting, I got a video, a message that had a video where a shopping cart attendant at Sunworld on Arcade Street in my ward, they got detained. Yeah. And I went there right away and got to be in solidarity with a handful of constitutional observers who were there and were there for the entire time that the store was open, all the way until they closed and employees were able to walk out safely. And the entire time that we were there was an ICE vehicle parked across the street at Los Ocampo and kept coming back and harassing people. I feel I'm livid.
You know, we're here. We know.
I just think that what you shared in the beginning really captured how I feel during this moment. My 3-year-old son, Tsongka, he said to my husband and I recently, I estoy tupaña. I just killed a woman, Renee Nicole Good. Our children should not be living in a world, in a country like this, where that is what they remember. They deserve better, and we all deserve better. Thank you. I really appreciate that. And I just wanted to thank everybody for giving me that space to share that. And it's really heavy on my heart, and I know that we're all going through a lot. And we're here, and all of the input that we have heard from everybody, whether it was in the council chambers here or the emails, the phone calls, the messages that you have sent to us. I say it over and over, it wasn't done in vain. And I want you to know that we are hard at work every day, and I really commend and applaud this entire council, and also want to really recognize my colleagues who sometimes, it's not easy to not follow the process and protocol, but have really put yourself out there for the community. So council members Bowie and our council vice president, I want to say thank you for your bold leadership in doing that. And this is not a moment for us to point fingers at each other or to blame anybody for anything at all. I'm talking about those of us at the table here, but it's really a moment of deep unity, and for everybody, all the council, my council colleagues who have really utilized your voice, your power, these seats that people have elected you into, to really pushing forward the timeline, expediting as soon as possible. I want to say thank you, because we have a first reading, and it's because of your leadership. And so everybody here, thank you. And thank you to everybody in the community who has really been pushing the council on this. I'm very proud to sponsor the language that we have here for the first reading. In recent months, ICE has wreaked havoc in our city and caused irreparable harm to community members through their dehumanizing tactics of racial profiling, intimidation, and lawlessness. Federal agents have repeatedly parked and used city property, like parking lots at our beloved libraries and recreational centers, as a staging area. This is unacceptable. We saw this over in my ward in November, where many conversations around our separation ordinance spurred. And thank you to the many people who put their bodies on the line, from community members, elected officials, you as well, Council Vice President. You even got sprayed by the chemical irritants. And it's not okay what's happening. Our library went into shutdown. Kids and families were still inside, and they were terrified, and they had to make a choice about whether they were going to leave a space that we know to be a place of sanctuary, that is welcoming, and that's safe. Our city properties are safe and welcoming spaces, values that are deeply violated by ICE and the authoritarian Trump regime, and I do not stand for that at all. And I stand in solidarity with you in fighting that. I am proud to sponsor this dire and life-saving ordinance in dedication to all who work, play, and live in St. Paul. And when I think about the story I shared earlier about my son and how he shouldn't be living in a world like this. I mean, we didn't ask for this. I know many of us in here, we did not ask for this. But I know who did ask for it, the MAGA supporters. So what I want to call on all MAGA supporters to do is to self-report their address to ICE. So you get a personal thank you by ICE. And you know what, with the reporting line, I mean, right now is the moment where if we want to delay, the tactics of ICE and delay their operations, which we know they want to do things swiftly. They want to do things as quickly as possible. They're even detaining citizens because they know that it is the citizens who go in to get detained. They're going to come out quickly. I mean, for the ICE agents, it's all about meeting those quotas. So if we want to delay those operations as much as possible, well, right now is the time to be reporting in those MAGA addresses. And what is happening is so unacceptable. And I'm very invested in making sure that people who wanted this, they will get that personal thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Yang. I think I saw Ms. Coleman.
Thank you, Council President. I think that my colleagues, Council Vice President Kim and Councilmember Yang, covered much of why this is so critical and where we are going from here so well. I just want to say briefly on on the ordinance that we're introducing today and why it feels so important and so urgent, and how the importance of it has only increased in recent days. As Councilmember Yang said, we have continued to see ICE attempt to use our public spaces as a location to stage their raids and their destruction of our communities. When we had a presentation from Edmundo Lijo in our city attorney's office last week at our policy committee meeting, he spoke about the initial intent of the separation ordinance as being about public trust and public safety, and how critical it is that every single resident of our city know what our values are and know how we're expending our resources, and understand with perfect clarity that we are not going to use city resources to enforce federal immigration law, to do the work of Donald Trump and ICE. And what we saw over the last several days, over the last week, as ICE continued to violate our cease and desist and show up in our city-owned parking lots, was a fracturing of public trust. I'm sure many of us saw the conversations happening on social media and other spaces over the weekend suggesting that our Parks and Rec department was collaborating with ICE, and that's why ICE was using our parking lots. That is what happens when ICE uses our public spaces. It is unacceptable for anybody in this community to have the impression that our Parks and Rec department would ever collaborate with ICE, because they never, ever would. They never have, they never will. That is not what we stand for as a city. We are so deeply committed in this building, across the thousands of employees who work for the city of St. Paul, to ensuring that this is a community where every single person is welcome, where every single person knows that we are fighting for them, not for ICE, not for Border Patrol, not for DHS. And so to me, it is so essential that we pass this ordinance, that we make sure, and the ordinances that will come, that continue to show who we are as a city, that continue to show who is welcome here. And that's our community members, that's our residents, that's everybody in this room, and it is not ICE. So that's all I will add.
Thank you, Ms. Coleman. Ms. Bowie.
Thank you, Council President. I'll just share some remarks because I know later on in our agenda we're going to have a public hearing. So I just want to really just have the time for people to participate in that. But I just want to just share, just like justice delayed is justice denied. And when I think about just the power that we have, our policy is our justice tools, the policy to provide clarity, information, and direction. And I think this ordinance makes it very crystal clear what our role is. And I also just want to say, I want to just really thank you, Councilmember Coleman, and also Council Vice President Kim and Yang, and also Council President Naker, for really just all the behind the scenes, and also Councilmember Jost, everybody, the behind the scenes work, the sweat equity that goes into this. I think all of us feel the heaviness of our responsibility, knowing that we were elected into these offices to handle city services, and now protecting our neighbors against a federal siege was not part of our platforms when we first ran. But now we have to become experts in this. So I do want to say I offer grace and my passion. I hope you do not see it as an attack or offense, but we hold really, really important roles. And often our work is invisible. I do appreciate us having this discussion publicly, even though there's not like a blueprint, right, around like how we navigate these waters. But it is really important to honor that work, particularly of how we're going to be crafting the future of protections of our neighbors, and really making sure we're responding strongly. I actually do appreciate how we are rolling this out in phases and not making perfection the enemy of good, or the enemy of action. I think, every week, every week that we can work to improve our systems and our laws. And also that third part too, that we talked about last week, our budgetary priorities. Policy alone isn't going to actually, fix some of the economic harms that people have been facing. We can also lean on our partners at the state and at the county level to really help with that safety net. And last but not least, I would just say also to Mr. Greenfield, I really appreciate how just stepping into his role and really leading with values and providing a lot of information for us, particularly around the framework around the direction we should be going. And one of the things that he had mentioned that I think is just so valuable is, making it very clear that, the federal government does not have legal authority to enter our non-public spaces. And that legal authority is something that we have to be strong on. That legal authority, we are representatives of what our legal authorities are. So just yet again, what I'll just share is, I'm always in support of anything that we can do to exercise our powers to make sure that our neighbors are safe. And we are thinking creatively, innovatively, and I just applaud us all. And again, just thank you for this work, for the sponsors. And I'm excited to pass this and adopt this.
Thank you, Ms. Bowie. Ms. Jost.
Thank you, Council President Naker. I just hope that it's clear to everyone that this council is unified against ICE, and we are committed to protecting our residents. This federal operation in our city it's a crisis, it's an emergency, and the impact has been brutal. I mean, our businesses closing, neighbors disappearing, really fear that everyone's experiencing just to go on about their everyday lives. This ordinance that was introduced today is the first step of many steps that we're going to take, as Mr. Greenfield mentioned, to ensure that our city doesn't waste its resources on unproductive federal work. Our constituents have made it clear that they do not want any part of this. We do not want ICE in our community, and we will do whatever we can to ensure that our city government maintains its stark separation from their operation. Our work is so critical. This might be one of the most important pieces of legislation that we work on this year, if not in our term. We must act intelligently and with haste. I want to make sure that our efforts are not further delayed by any missteps in our procedure. I'm so proud. Councilmember Coleman, thank you. Council President Naker. I also really want to thank Tim Greenfield, who just presented here earlier. I don't think that anyone could have captured the work that we're doing in characterizing our values any better. So Tim, thank you very much. I want to thank Council Vice President Kim, Councilmember Yang, Councilmember Bowie, thanking everyone here. I know that we are all united and we really care so deeply about this issue, and that is why we are bringing it forth in this way. I just appreciate everyone's diligence and thoughtfulness, ensuring that we are maximizing our power when our residents need it the most. So I will continue to support the work of this separation ordinance in any way that I can, and making sure that, we're doing this correctly and legally and quickly. I just really appreciate everyone's work to figure out how we could roll this out in a way that makes the most sense and while delivering to our residents as quickly as possible. Like I think it was Councilmember Bowie said, not letting perfection be the enemy of progress as we're trying to move forward. The separation ordinance that we're working on has so many parts to it. It takes a significant amount of analysis and work, and so I just 100% agree that this is the best way to proceed. And so I mentioned we'll do everything, we are doing everything we can to move this forward as quickly as possible, and our constituents deserve that, and they deserve so much more. So thank you everyone for all your work.
Thank you so much, Ms. Jost. Thank you to all of my colleagues. I agree 100% with everything that's been said, and I feel very, very proud and very grateful to be part of this strong, resolute council at a time like this. I just want to add one element that I think is important as well. The trust that Ms. Coleman talked about being built, and the trust that is broken down when people see federal agents in our parking lots. That's also trust that's important to build up and restore among our own frontline staff. The folks who are working in our parks and rec centers, the folks who are working in our libraries, the folks who are working in these buildings, knowing that federal agents are not allowed in parking lots, that they are not allowed in non-public spaces, that gives needed assurance and clarity to our frontline staff as well. And I think right now what we're hearing from everyone in our community is that we need clarity. We need to know what the rule is. We need to know what's wrong and what's right. And at a time when everyone else might be disregarding that, one thing we can do as leaders is hold firm to what is wrong and what is right. And we are clearly stating that line here today in one regard. We will continue to do that as we move forward with many other pieces of legislation. So thank you again to my colleagues. This is just a first reading. So this item will be laid over, and there will be a public hearing on this item next week. We're having a public hearing today in general on immigration operations, but this ordinance will have a public hearing next week.
The item is laid over to January 28th for second reading public hearing. Item number 13 is second reading public hearing of ordinance 26-2, changing references in the legislative and administrative codes from animal control to animal services and correcting typographical errors.
So this does bring us to our public hearing section of the agenda. So for every public hearing, we will, when it is your item, we will invite folks up. I will say, this is your public hearing. Is anyone here to speak on this item? When I say that, that's your cue to come on up, stand in between those two microphones. Start with your name and where you're coming from. You will have 2 minutes to testify, and they do go by quickly, and my job is to keep everyone to 2 minutes. You'll see the timer in front of you, and we just ask for your cooperation with that. And then when you're done testifying, you can sign in on either of the 2 sign-in sheets on either side. So with that, this is item 13. Is there anyone here to speak on this item? This is a public hearing. Seeing none, I'll take a motion from Ms. Coleman to close the public hearing and lay the matter over till January 28th for final adoption. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed.
6 in favor, none opposed. The ordinance is laid over to January 28th for final adoption. Item number 14 is resolution public hearing 25-293, authorizing the Department of Parks and Recreation to amend the financing and spending plan in the amount of $85,709 and to enter into an agreement with the Minnesota Department of Commerce to accept solar on public buildings grant programs for solar installation at Dayton's Bluff Recreation Center.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak on this item? Seeing none, I'll take a motion from Ms. Jost to close the public hearing and approve. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
6 in favor, none opposed. The resolution is adopted. Item number 15 is resolution public hearing 25-294, authorizing the Department of Parks and Recreation to amend the financing and spending plan in the amount of $72,000 and to enter into an agreement with the Minnesota Department of Commerce to accept solar on public buildings grant program funds for solar installation at Frogtown Community Center.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak on this item? Seeing none, I'll take a motion from Ms. Bowie to close the public hearing and approve. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
6 in favor, none opposed. The resolution is adopted. Item number 16 is resolution public hearing 25-295, authorizing the Department of Parks and Recreation to accept grant funding in the amount of $203,680 from the State of Minnesota Department of Natural Resources to support St. Paul's tree planting program.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak on this item? Seeing none, I'll take a motion from Ms. Bowie to close the public hearing and approve. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
6 in favor, none opposed. The resolution is adopted. Item number 17 is resolution public hearing 26-9, authorizing execution of a grant agreement and amending the city's 2026 operating budget to include a $100,000 donation from Unity Church Unitarian to support work of the St. Paul Recovery Act Community Reparations Commission.
And this is a public hearing, and I know we have a few speakers who are set to speak. We've set aside roughly 10 minutes total for speakers. So what we want to do is invite anyone who's here to speak on this item up. We'll let you divide the time amongst yourselves because this is really a special item. So welcome up. Can we set the timer for 10? Welcome.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is the Reverend Dr. Oscar Sinclair. I serve Unity Church Unitarian as its senior minister. For the last several years, our congregation has been discerning what it means to be the beloved community in this moment. Now, others are going to talk about how and what and how that's related to the proposition in front of you. What I want to do is just for a moment talk about the role of the church. What we do is we point to the world as it is and the world as it ought to be, and sometimes highlight the distinction between those two things. When you walk into our sanctuary in St. Paul, you pass a plaque from the Reverend Arthur Foote that says, "May courage steel our wills and the light of truth forever guide us." That's a message for all moments, for today and for our work going forward. And our work to support the Reparations Commission is in large part guided by that love of truth. It's an act of moral imagination to work on reparations in 2026 in the context of everything that you have been talking about today, to say, what would happen if we told the truth and then acted on it going forward? That's what this is a proposal to do. I will hand it over to Marcia Hayes, the president of our Board of Trustees.
Hello, I'm Marcia Hayes. I am chair of the Board of Trustees at Unity Church Unitarian. And it is a pleasure to be here today as the St. Paul City Council adopts this resolution on behalf of the St. Paul Recovery Act and Community Reparations Commission to accept $100,000 from the Unity Church Unitarian Helena Courier Fund for Racial Justice and Healing. Thank you for witnessing this pledge of our congregation's shared commitment to reparatory justice in St. Paul and our world. This occasion marks the furtherance of the Unity Board of Trustees' work over the last 18 months to explore deeply the potential role for our church to play in repairing our broken world through reparations, working with the Racial Justice Ministry team. In 2024, we, the board, established the St. Paul Reparations Commission as a primary source of moral authority for our work. So this past year, we, over dinners, conversations, deeply held discussions, have succeeded in forging working relationships, fruitful connections, building friendships, understanding, developing a working rhythm, and having frank conversations to hash out where we're going. So as the commission completed their 2026 work plan, it has informed us that Unity's funds, and just as importantly, our allyship, will strengthen its foundation through the expansion of public outreach and education. It will also help with further plans for a historic archive of American descendants of chattel slavery in St. Paul. Detailing these stories is essential to illustrate the ways in which institutional racism has impacted every area of life, from housing to education, healthcare, land use, economic prosperity, up to including today. So we are grateful to take these steps with you to build the beloved community. With that, I'd like to introduce Nyla Golden, member of Unity, past member of the board, and member of the Reparations Committee.
Well, I don't have a whole lot to say other than I remember coming here about, 2 years ago, when the ordinance was passed. I'm a proud past board member. I'm a member of Unity, and I'm also a commissioner. And so I have the opportunity to wear so many hats and to be involved in what's happening and to be totally proud of St. Paul. Didn't grow up in St. Paul, moved here. And I'm very, very proud of what's happening. And I'm so happy to be able to be part of to move it on. And I will turn it over to Russ Ballinger. You know who he is.
Hello, everybody.
Welcome back.
It's been a while. I'm Russ Ballinger. I'm a past council member. I was given the honor of taking the lead on the ordinance that would come. But prior to that, Council Member Prince was already pushing that, and then we both are members of Unity Church. The first time I came to Unity Church, I had kind of slipped off from our home. I was 8 years old, and in a neighborhood that was new to us. I'd come from where 94 is now, and people weren't quite ready. There were different housing laws. This was almost 70 years ago. When I was headed up that way on Selby Avenue, the police picked me up at 8 years old, had me up against the wall, and were going through my pockets, kind of reminiscent of what's going on now. But when I got to Unity, everybody was warm, and it was different. And over the years, I would go back and back until I saw people remembered my name. And I don't know. And there was a lady from Unity Church and her husband that sold us our next home that was about 6 blocks from there. And I saw her when I was about 10 coming out of the church. I said, Mrs. McFarland, are you a member of this church? She said, yes, baby, I'm a member of this church. And she remained, the church buried her a few years ago at 109. So I'm a proud member of the church.
Thank you, City Council, distinguished guests. Justice delayed is justice denied, and Black Americans have been fighting for reparations for 400 years in this country. So we are excited to be here today, and for this moment, we are very grateful. On behalf of the St. Paul Recovery Act Reparations Commission, we accept this $100,000 gift from Unity Church with deep humility and a renewed sense of responsibility. This is not just a donation, it is a profound investment in the moral and economic fiber of our city. By taking this step, Unity Church is modeling what it means for local institutions to move beyond words and into the active work of restorative justice. These funds will directly support our mission to close the massive racial wealth gap and build a St. Paul where equity is a reality, not just an aspiration. This gift provides vital momentum as we work to design reparatory policy recommendations that create tangible change for American descendants of slavery who reside in St. Paul. Thank you for your leadership and commitment to making St. Paul a leader in the reparations movement.
Thank you so much. Don't go away, because we do want to get a picture of you with our fancy camera before you go. So Beef to our communications associate will do that, and then there's, I think, going to be some comments for you.
Jane, you can't be hiding in the back. You gotta get in front, Jane. Yeah.
As long as I'm here. We have 2.5 minutes. I just want to say, I just have so much gratitude to all of you, to Veronica Burt, the staff person for the commission. Dan Staley worked with our church, a couple of us, to try to write that grant agreement. It wasn't easy, and he was incredibly patient. So I just needed to thank you.
This interloper is Councilmember Jane Prince, by the way. For anybody else. All right. So Unity.
We're missing.
Yep.
Here you go. There we go. Got all these guys in. 1, 2, 3.
Well, thank you all so much for being here. Thank you to our Reparations Commission, our leaders, and to Unity Church. I find it incredible that you're thanking us. We are thanking you for an $100,000 donation that will be the catalyst for much more generosity. So thank you so much. Councilmember Johnson, who somehow not only manages to be on maternity leave with her first child, but also to write incredibly eloquent statements. I certainly was not doing that when I was on maternity leave. Sent a statement for me to read in her absence, just to say thank you to you. So this is from Councilmember Johnson. I'm truly honored and excited to be a council member during this historical time of accepting our very first donation for the Reparations Commission, with hope of more community partners to come. I would like to sincerely thank the Unity Church Unitarian for the historic donation of $100,000 toward the St. Paul Recovery Act Community Reparations Commission to propel their work forward through the harm report, public listening sessions and education, and the 2026 work plan. The Reparations Commission is made up of 11 individuals and staff living across the wards of St. Paul that have committed their time, talent, and innovation to addressing the injustices caused by systemic racism against American descendants of chattel slavery living in St. Paul. In 2021, the St. Paul City Council passed a resolution on behalf of the city recognizing the harm that has been created by the city and outlined key initiatives to ensure that we didn't just say sorry, but that we actualized repair and began doing sorry. The Legislative Advisory Committee, the Permanent Commission, and all of the work before I, Councilmember Johnson, began as a council member leads us to this historic moment and day. By our City Council accepting this resolution, we will continue to fulfill these ongoing efforts in pursuit of this historic contribution through the Commission's work plan. I am grateful for all that came to speak today from Unity Church, the Reparations Commission, and community members. I'm also grateful for my council colleagues for continuing to support, uplift, and recognize the rich value of the Commission. I'm excited and looking forward to seeing the outcome of the Commission's work following the acceptance of this donation. Thank you, and that's from Councilwoman Shaniqua Johnson. Ms. Bowie.
Thank you, Council President. I'm so happy to hear that letter from Councilmember Johnson. I know me and her take this work really personal and want to see this work powered through. I just want to say thank you to our spiritual leaders, our faith leaders, our activists, our freedom fighters. Long before there was an ordinance here, I've been seeing many of you in the community making this work possible, normalizing the conversation of what used to be, very controversial now is ordinance and now is normalized and permanent in our city. I also just want to say, for former council members who are supposed to be in retirement and still raising money and coming back, St. Paul is just built differently. And it just shows not only our deep commitment, but our work ethic and our long life, efforts. So I just want to say also too, one of the things that I haven't really heard that was connected to this repair work, it actually started, Councilmember Coleman, your dad, when he was mayor, Chris Coleman, was at the Rondo Plaza, and I believe this was, I want to say 2006, maybe, but he was the first mayor to actually publicly acknowledge and issue an apology, particularly with the damage that was done in the Rondo community. So I just want to just always uplift of when our public officials, help spark the catalyst to this change. This work is very personal to me, as you can imagine, especially as a council member whose ancestors were survivors of chattel slavery and state-sanctioned violence and mass incarceration. I get really vulnerable about this work when we talk about the harms and addressing, the violence. I'm someone who had a cousin who was killed by St. Paul Police Department. And, when we think about just a lot of the healing that is necessary and the commitment that we have to this work, I want to just, express that it takes a lot of bravery and courage for folks to show up and do the work of policy, but also doing the deep work of recovering and like how we are, how this is like showing up in our lives, right? My residents know very closely what it feels like to be treated like a permanent second-class citizen and denied their basic human rights and freedoms. And I come from Rondo, a people who survived, her survival depended on our ability to really come together, preserve our culture, community, and our spirit of collective healing. And I see this donation truly from Unity Church as a deeper commitment and a deeper responsibility for the healing work for the Commission to bring comprehensive recommendations. And I'm just so happy to hear from our current chair, Chair Cruz, particularly around some repairs and some policies and practices and budgetary decisions that's going to be coming forth. I also see this as a commitment to legislating freedom. This has just been an ongoing theme that's came about. It actually sparked from our public hearing that we had some weeks ago, and now maybe a month ago. It feels like so long ago, where someone had shared their lack of belief that we had the power to legislate freedom, and that deeply resonates with me because I think about what are the impacts of our laws, right? And how can we make sure that we're using these tools to repair many years, hundreds of years of damage. I also see this donation as a way to empower the advisory board with some really strong economic development plans and being a thought partner in that work, supporting affordable housing and home ownership, really helping to amplify our inheritance fund and making sure we get the dollars out there in the door so we can get people to start building a stronger economic freedom in their own families, building accountability mechanisms to really prevent racist practices and racist behaviors, and also support our quality service delivery. So the folks in Frogtown is getting the same level of care and services for the St. Paul Lights and Highland. And really diversifying our city vendors and contracts. Here in the city, we have some equity goals, racial equity goals that we're trying to meet, and we need to make sure that's reflected. And last but not least, truly continuing the programs and partnerships that are the lifelines to our communities. We worked so hard to build trust. When I think about all the different staff members and the programs and things that may not fit under the box of what we see as reparations, like for example our free swim classes, that is really instrumental. When I think about being a young Black girl and never learned how to swim, and never really saw our public pools as a place for me to be, now being a city council member and making sure that that's in our budget, and now our young people, no matter the race, has the opportunity to be welcomed and learn how to swim. And, I just want to say thank you for doing all the work, the grunt work, so we don't have to, negotiate in December around how we're going to continue this work. You've done it for us, so thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Bowie. With that, is there anyone else to speak on this item? Sorry, I'm just see if anyone else from the public wants to speak. Otherwise, I will take a motion from Ms. Yang to close the public hearing. And, we'll have a discussion first. Sorry, Ms. Yang, go ahead.
Thank you, Council President. I just wanted to make some quick comments and say I echo everything that you, Councilmember Bowie, and Councilmember Johnson have shared. This definitely makes it to the top in terms of my highlights from today. And so I really want to say thank you to everybody from the Unity Church for your leadership, your commitment to community, to liberation and justice, and reparations for descendants of chattel slavery. I looked into the crowd that was up in there in the room, and they were a part of really planting the seed for this. And so to those leaders, like you, Trahern, thank you for continuing to invest your time and energy into this. And the last thing is that I just want to say thank you for spreading hope during a time when it is so needed. And so I hope and pray that everything that you do in the community, that you also receive that 100-fold.
Thanks, Ms. Yang. All right, I'll now take a motion from Ms. Bowie to close the public hearing and approve. Any final discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
6 in favor, none opposed. The resolution is adopted. Item number 18 is Resolution Public Hearing 26-10, approving the petition of Church of St. Bernard, Inc. to vacate a portion of alley right-of-way in Block 1 of Barney Norton and Kingsley 2nd addition to St. Paul, address 147 Geranium Avenue West.
I told you we'd be going all over the map. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak on this item? Seeing none, I'll take a motion from Vice President Kim to close the public hearing and approve. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
6 in favor, none opposed. The resolution is adopted. Item number 19 is Resolution Public Hearing 26-11, approving the petition of Friends of Nova Classical Academy to vacate airspace over and across of the intersection of Madison Street and Mercer Way.
This is a public hearing. Is there anyone here to speak on this item? Seeing none, I'll take a motion from Ms. Jost to close the public hearing and approve. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
6 in favor, none opposed. The resolution is adopted. I think I forgot to read this one, so I'm gonna. I think we skipped that one. My accident, my fault.
Oh, no, I think you said it.
I did. Okay, never mind. Okay.
I remember because you skipped all the parentheses.
Okay. Item number 20 is Resolution Public Hearing 26-2, public hearing on grievances about federal immigration operations.
And again, for all of those of you who are here on this item, this is a general public hearing on immigration operations. We will be having these every week for at least the next few months, just to give folks a chance to be heard. Again, please remember, this is my job is to keep everyone to 2 minutes. I appreciate everyone's cooperation with that. We want to make sure the last speaker gets the same amount of attention as the very first speaker. And again, please start with your name, where you're coming from, and then make sure to sign in when you're done. Welcome up.
Thank you, President of the Council. First of all, this is coming from the Mayor's Advisory Council for People with Disabilities, and I would just like to begin it, and then I could just submit it. Would that be all right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Dear members of the St. Paul City Council, on behalf of the St. Paul Mayor's Advisory Council of People with Disabilities, we write to express strong support for an eviction moratorium, which you all passed, and to request immediate increased protections from immigration enforcement activities by the St. Paul Police Department. These measures are essential to preserve the health, safety, and independence of people with disability in our city. May I present?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, and make sure to sign in. And by the way, just to all folks, we know 2 minutes go by quickly. You can always submit testimony in writing to us here or via email at another time. So if you run out of time and you want to do that, we encourage that. Welcome up.
I'll let it reset.
Oh, yeah, sure. Thank you, Ms. Yang. If anyone here has a young person with them or some other reason why, it's difficult for them to stay, we would love for them to be able to come towards the front of the line. So thanks to everyone for your help with that. Welcome.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Sarah Gartner, and I reside in Ward 7. I'm here today to raise concerns about the current federal immigration operations and their impact in St. Paul. First, I'm asking for clear public clarification on the city separation ordinance and how city staff, including the St. Paul Police Department, engage with DHS. Residents need to understand in plain terms what cooperation does and does not look like and what consequences will follow if the ordinance is violated. When that information is unclear, fear spreads and trust in public safety declines. Second, there are credible repeated reports of federal officials engaging in conduct that would not be tolerated from local residents or city employees, including but not limited to reckless driving, failure to follow traffic laws, altered or obscured license plates, and pointing weapons at unarmed residents. These reports warrant oversight and response. No agency operating in St. Paul should be exempt from the basic standards of lawful behavior. Third, there are serious concerns about U.S. citizens being illegally detained during DHS operations. This is not an immigration issue or a policy disagreement. This is a constitutional crisis and a civil rights issue. The city has a responsibility to speak clearly and take action when civil rights are violated within its jurisdiction. Finally, these operations have a real and measurable financial impact on St. Paul business community and our local economy. Businesses are losing workers, customers, revenue because fear is disrupting daily life. Economic stability depends upon people feeling safe enough to participate in their communities. St. Paul is committed to safety, dignity, and the rule of law, and I urge the City Council to do whatever is within their power to reinforce those commitments through clarity, accountability, oversight, and action. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Make sure to sign in. Welcome up.
Hello again. Ooh, sorry, I keep breaking this. Hello again. My name is Heather C. Liu. I was here on January 7th, immediately after Renee Grode was murdered, speaking specifically about the federal operations here in Minnesota. I want to give you a couple of updates of what's happened since the last time I was here. It's been 2 weeks. This is my first time leaving the house since Monday. On Monday, the 19th, I noticed an unmarked black SUV with 2 people with face coverings in it in front of my house in Ward 6. It idled in front of my home for 2 to 5 minutes as I panicked, trying to figure out if and when someone was going to come and save me and help me, and I was the only person that could. The people inside looked in the direction of my house, took photos of my home, and I documented this, called my neighbors, and talked to loved ones until my block was clear. I was intimidated, and even as a U.S. citizen, I'm mixed Asian, I'm Southern Chinese, I'm Southeast Asian, 1.5 generation immigrant here, and I'm acutely aware that I'm a forever foreigner in this country. I'm carrying my passport and my head is on a swivel. I've been taking Ativan every single day, and I really can't stop shaking. I think this is just who I am now. Since January 7th, my neighbors have been abducted, assaulted, traumatized, terrorized, and denied our due process and First Amendment rights. My St. Paul neighbor, among elder and citizen, was detained by ICE in freezing temperatures with very little to no clothes on. They were planning a funeral. My community is organized and taking care of each other, organized rapid responses, mutual aid, escorts, and so on and so forth. I love my community for this. This is simple. Black, brown, indigenous, immigrant, and refugee populations are not safe in both public and private spaces where DHS, ICE, Border Patrol, and other federal tendrils have entangled into our communities. There's racial profiling, intimidation, lawlessness, and utter disrespect for our citizens and the U.S. Constitution. ICE must be abolished. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Make sure to sign in. Welcome up.
Hi, I'm Beth Menninga, and I live in Ward 4. I'm an early childhood elder, and I actually have been meeting with a group of child care centers in St. Paul since the summer to work on the issue of the crisis of losing child care. I wish I was here to talk about that, but I'm here to talk about ICE. And I actually originally wanted to talk about expediting the separation order. I understand from the conversation with Mr. Greenfield that you're working on that. I would like to add a thought in there about residents and city property and non-public property. We also have organizations that are human service organizations, including child care, but I'm also thinking about the medical providers I heard on a press conference yesterday, school properties, and other organizations like child care that are serving the families and our infrastructure in our community. And what's happening to those organizations is they're being attacked as well. And I have a couple of examples of child care programs I know of in St. Paul that have had to go on partial shutdown because ICE is activated in their next door neighborhood or they're staging down the street. I also know of a Spanish immersion program that had ICE circling their property and taunting their volunteers. So it's affecting families, children. It's traumatic. It's traumatizing. So what we need your help. So we need your help thinking about the separation order and how quickly that can happen. I know you have your process, but I know it also takes, as we heard today, 3 weeks to even get a decision made. So that's urgent for us. If you can't do it today, please let us know as soon as possible when you can address that question of are there protections available for childcare? And in specific, we need the St. Paul Police to be clear because we've gotten very different messages about what they can and cannot do if ICE comes and violates our property against our wishes or threatens children and families. So we would love to have something in writing, a press release, anything, what the City Council, the Mayor, and SPPD will do to protect child care. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Make sure to sign in.
Hello, my name is Angela Clare, and I'm a center director in a child care program here in St. Paul. I just wanted to speak today about the real impact with the current environment and how it's impacting our children, families, staff members, and community. Child care programs have been placed in the national spotlight due to the fraud allegations and also bringing unannounced audit visits. While accountability does matter, lack of clarity around who's entering our buildings has created fear. We're also concerned about individuals seeking attention on social media who may attempt to enter our programs to film children and families, and that fear is real. On top of this, many of us are experiencing deep anxiety related to the immigration enforcement activity in our neighborhoods. My program is located in an area where this activity has been reoccurring on a daily basis. Just last week, a helicopter hovered over our building of children alongside a large caravan of ICE vehicles. I heard whistles outside and a woman yelling for help, a sound that I cannot forget. If you have not heard someone being taken by ICE, it stays in your head. I hear it every night when I go to sleep. That day, our center went into lockdown for 3 hours and again for 4 hours 2 days later. This is not okay. Kids shouldn't have to be in a space where their buildings are locked and doors are closed and all the lights are off. As a result, we have families who are keeping their children home, not because of illness or choice that they just want to be home for the day, but because they're afraid. They're afraid to leave their community to bring their child to a place that should be safe. And I want to be clear that my experience is mild compared to some other programs in St. Paul and what they've experienced with their children and staff. As a center director, my responsibility is to ensure the safety and well-being of every child and staff member, and I can say today that certainty has faded from me. Our children cannot freely enjoy outdoor activities. We have new snow outside. They can't be outside. So the fear is not abstract. Safety, consistency, and peace of mind for our children is not negotiable.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Make sure to sign in. Welcome up.
Hello, I'm Celeste Finn, founder and director of Big Wonder Childcare in Ward 1, and I live in Ward 2, and I live in Ward 1. Thank you so much for having this on the agenda today. I'm also really proud that we're able to close on the Day of Truth and Freedom on Friday. I wish with all my heart that I did not have to testify today. I wish with all my heart that the city had organized this weeks ago. Minneapolis renewed their separation ordinance on December 11th. Why are we just starting this process? I find this to be a profound act of negligence by our city's leaders. I know that the legal footing is essential, but the city's inaction, mixed messaging, and poor leadership are inexcusable. I opened Big Wonder to honor the unique rights of children, families, and teachers. That's very difficult right now. I need to update my emergency and risk reduction plans during ICE occupation to keep my kids safe. ICE is targeting childcare, and I cannot do my job of protecting the children in my care without courageous, timely, aware leadership by the city. Last week, we were told that it was murky if St. Paul police would respond to a 911 call regarding unlawful ICE activity at a childcare center by a council member's aide. Then, a staff member from the mayor's office called and said that they would intercede if ICE is acting unlawfully. The next day, council members concurred with this statement. During my meeting with the police chief the following day, I heard that St. Paul police would not interfere with ICE under any circumstances. Mixed messaging by the city council, the mayor's office, and the police highlights how poorly coordinated the city's efforts have been. We need greater clarity and communication from the city leaders to keep St. Paul residents safe, which is why we raised the SOS organized and involved the press. I wish I didn't have to, but I'll never again take our democracy for granted. Citizens must hold our lawmakers and government leaders accountable. Please act as though the lives of your constituents are on the line. We need the separation ordinance now and provide a press release with St. Paul, the mayor, and the city council. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Make sure to sign in. Welcome up.
I'm the director of a child care center in St. Paul. The trauma facing our city and child care in particular did not happen by accident. Minnesota government officials handed a YouTuber a list of small child care providers to investigate fraud